7. Paul Kibugi Mwite with 132. Peter Kenneth with 160. Raila Odinga with 20,027. Uhuru Kenyatta with 804. Total votes cast 55,484. Total rejected votes 1,111. Valid votes 54,373. Registered voters 66,206. Those are the results for Malava constituency, constituency number 201, Kakamega County.
Good morning. I wish to present results from Nairobi County. Constituency code number 280, Kasarani. James Kiapi, 83. Martha Karua, 226. Mohamed Dida, 43. Musalia Mudavadi, 438. Paul Mwite, 19. Peter Kenneth, 894. Raila Odinga, 24,818. Uhuru Kenyatta, 64,313. The total votes cast is 91,580. The total rejected votes 746. The valid votes 90,834. And this constituency has a registered voter population of 103,726. I also wish to present results from the other constituencies in Kajiado County, which administratively fall under Nairobi region in the commission. Kajiado North constituency, this is constituency code number 183. James Kiapi, 117. Martha Karua, 261. Mohamed Dida, 75. Musalia Mudavadi, 698. Paul Mwite, 20. Peter Kenneth, 921. Raila Odinga, 26,853. Uhuru Kenyatta, 53,702. The total votes cast 83,451. The total rejected votes 804. Valid votes 82,647. And the constituency has a registered population of 102,631. Constituency number 185, Kajiado East. James Kiapi, 477. Martha Karua, 88. Mohamed Dida, 57. Musalia Mudavadi, 596. Paul Mwite, 9. Peter Kenneth, 407. Raila Odinga, 32,498. Uhuru Kenyatta, 23,724. The total votes cast are 58,457. The total rejected votes are 601. The valid votes are 57,856. And the constituency has registered voters of 71,561. I also present Kajiado West constituency, which is constituency number 186. James Kiapi, 304. Martha Karua, 48. Mohammed Dida, 15. Musalia Mudavadi, 108. Paul Muite, 8. Peter Kenneth, 171. Raila Odinga, 20,488. Uhuru Kenyatta, 22,358. The total votes cast are 43,721. The total rejected votes are 221. The valid votes are 43,500, and the constituency has a total of 47,499 registered voters. Sorry. I also present results for constituency number 288, which is Kamukunji. James Kiapi, 59. Martha Karua, 86. Mohammed Dida, 1,549. Musalia Mudavadi, 678. Paul Muite, 21. Peter Kenneth, 320. Raila Odinga, 31,730. Uhuru Kenyatta, 36,762. The total votes cast, 71,956. The total rejected votes, 761. The valid votes, 71,195, and the registered voters are 95,912. Just a correction on Peter Kenneth, I wish to repeat, 310. Thank you.
Good morning. Final presidential results. This is Kitui County, Mwingi Central Constituency, constituency code 069. James Kiapi, 216. Martha Karua, 349. Mohammed Dida, 130. Musalia Mudavadi, 610. Paul Muite, 140. Peter Kenneth, 400. Raila Odinga, 29,834. Uhuru Kenyatta, 4,316. Total votes cast, 36,317. Total rejected votes, 322. Valid votes, 35,995. Registered voters, 43,530. Thank you.
Good morning. I have results for Suba constituency, constituency number 252 in Homa Bay County. James Kiapi, 25, Martha Karua 17, Muhammad Abduba 16, Musalia Mudavadi 46, Paul Kibugi 9, Peter Kenneth 33, Raila Odinga 30,292, Uhuru Kenyatta 85, total votes casted 30,625, total rejected votes 102, valid votes 30,523, registered voters 32,439. Results for Ugenya constituency number 232 in Siaya County. James Kiapi 52, Martha Karua 16, Muhammad Abduba 16, Musalia Mudavadi 105, Paul Kibugi 6, Peter Kenneth 45, Raila Odinga 35,030, Uhuru Kenyatta 97, total votes casted 35,530, total rejected votes 163, valid votes 35,367, registered voters 38,487. Results for Borabu constituency number 273 in Nyamira County. James Kiapi 181, Martha Karua 256, Muhammad Abduba 81, Musalia Mudavadi 299, Paul Kibugi 40, Peter Kenneth 308, Raila Odinga 21,710, Uhuru Kenyatta 11,456, total votes casted 34,764, total rejected votes 433, valid votes 34,311, registered voters 41,634. Results for Kuria East constituency number 260 in Migori County. James Kiapi 108, Martha Karua 143, Muhammad Abduba 56, Musalia Mudavadi 178, Paul Kibugi 25, Peter Kenneth 145, Raila Odinga 12,126, Uhuru Kenyatta 9,192, total vote casted 22,167, rejected votes 194, valid votes 21,973, registered voters 27,568. Thank you. Sorry, I want to take you through that.
Borabu, the valid votes. Borabu.
Yeah, I go back through the results for Borabu constituency number 273 in Nyamira County. James Kiapi 181, Martha Karua 256, Muhammad Abduba 81, Musalia Mudavadi 299, Paul Kibugi 40, Peter Kenneth 308, Raila Odinga 21,710, Uhuru Kenyatta 11,456, total vote Votes casted 34,764. Total rejected votes 433. Valid votes 34,331. Registered voters 41,634.
For Central Province, I have results for Gatanga constituency, constituency number 110, with total registered voters of 74,055. James Kiapi 162, Martha Karua 104, Muhammad Diba 59, Musalia Mudavadi 180, Paul Muite 44, Peter Kenneth 923, Raila Odinga 5,287, Uhuru Kenyatta 61,214. Total votes cast 68,367. Total rejected votes 394. Valid votes 67,973. Results for Kirinyaga Central, constituency number 103. Kirinyaga Central. James Kiapi 163. Martha Karua 327. Mohamed Dida 52. Musalia Mudavadi 70. Paul Muite 29. Peter Kenneth 184. Raila Odinga 877. Uhuru Kenyatta 53,610. Total votes cast 55,745. Total rejected votes 433. Valid votes 55,312. Total registered voters 103,726. Moya constituency, constituency number 100. James Kiapi 225. Martha Karua 404. Mohamed Dida 89. Musalia Mudavadi 95. Paul Muite 45. Peter Kenneth 213. Raila Odinga 1,144. Uhuru Kenyatta 75,347. Total votes cast 78,128. Total rejected votes 566. Valid votes 77,562. The registered voters in Mwea constituency are 86,759. Results for Ruiru constituency, constituency number 115. Registered voters 112,391. James Kiapi 81. Martha Karua 233. Mohamed Dida 63. Musalia Mudavadi 423. Paul Muite 18. Peter Kenneth 756. Raila Odinga 16,286. Uhuru Kenyatta 76,403. Total votes cast 95,046. Total rejected votes 783. Valid votes 94,263. Still in Central, I have results for Kikuyu constituency. Kikuyu constituency with registered voters at 65,041. James Kiapi 66. Martha Karua 182. Mohamed Dida 25. Musalia Mudavadi 192. Paul Muite, 45. Peter Kenneth, 501. Raila Odinga, 3,350. Uhuru Kenyatta, 53,904. Total votes cast, 60,078. Total rejected votes, 436. Valid votes, 59,642. Results for Gatundu North, constituency number 112, with total registered voters at 52,962. James Kiapi, 74. Martha Karua, 82. Mohamed Dida, 32. Musalia Mudavadi, 59. Paul Muite, 19. Peter Kenneth, 102. Raila Odinga, 349. Uhuru Kenyatta, 49,158. Total votes cast, 50,128. Total rejected votes, 253. Valid votes, 49,875. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. The Commission will continue giving you regular and timely updates as we continue receiving the results. The Commission has 290 returning officers in the country and 47 county returning officers. So far, 215 returning officers have reported and presented their results. Thank you, and we will continue updating you. As for the media, we have sent you the presidential results on your emails, and we will also give you hard copies from the media center. Thank you very much.
Latest briefing by the IEBC on the results from 17 constituencies. I'll take you through those results one more time. But one thing that they're doing, of course, as they're announcing these results, they are also changing on the screens because right now the presidential race, Uhuru Kenyatta at 1,299,787, Raila Odinga at 900,874 votes. So as I mentioned, results for 17 constituencies. I will take you through them, and we began with Western Kenya, Kakamega, that is Malava constituency. And in there, Muite got 132 votes, Dida 209, Kiapi 227, 32,557 votes for Musalia in Malava, Kenneth 160, Karua 227. Raila Odinga garnered 20,027 votes in Malava, Uhuru 804. That's for Malava constituency. In Kasarani, that is in Nairobi, Kasarani constituency, Uhuru Kenyatta garnered 64,318. Or rather 313, I beg your pardon, 64,313 for Uhuru in Kasarani, Raila 24,818, Karua 226 in Kasarani, Kenneth 894, Musalia Mudavadi 438, Kiapi 83, Mohamed Abduba Dida 43 votes in Kasarani constituency, and finally Muite there got 19. Managed to garner 19 votes. That's the second constituency. The third one tonight, they've just announced them, Kajiado North constituency, and Muite 20 votes, Dida 75, Kiapi 117, Musalia 698, Kenneth 921 votes, Karua 261. Raila Amolo Odinga 26,858, Uhuru Kenyatta 53,702. So just a quick recap again, those are the first three constituencies they announced tonight. Let's move on to the fourth one, Kajiado East constituency. Uhuru Kenyatta 23,724, Raila Odinga 32,498, Karua 88 votes, Kenneth 407, Musalia 596, Kiapi 477, Dida 57, Muite 9 votes. Constituency 5 to be announced just now was Kajiado West constituency, and we start with the Muite 8 votes, Dida 15, 304 votes for Kiapi, 108 votes for Musalia, Kenneth 171, 48 votes for Karua, 20,488 votes for Raila Odinga, and for Uhuru Kenyatta 22,358. The next constituency, Kamukunji constituency, Uhuru Kenyatta 36,762, Raila Odinga 31,730, Karua 86, Kenneth 310, we have Musalia 678, Kiapi 59, and Dida 1,549, and Muite on Kamukunji garnered 21 votes. Mwingi Central, Muite 140 votes, Dida 130 votes, Kiapi 216, Musalia 610, Kenneth 400, Karua 349, Raila Amolo Odinga 29,834, Uhuru Kenyatta 4,316. Let's move on. They told you there were a total of 17 announced. Go to Suba constituency. Suba constituencies in Homa Bay County. Uhuru Kenyatta 85 votes, Raila 30,292, 30,292 Raila, Karua 17, Kenneth 33, Musalia 46, Kiapi 25, Dida 16, and Muite 9 votes. That in Suba constituency in Homa Bay County. To Ugenya constituency in Siaya County, we have Dida with 16 votes, Muite with 6 votes, James Ole Kiapi coming in with 52 votes, Musalia Mudavadi 105 votes, Peter Kenneth 45 votes, Martha Karua 16 votes, Raila Odinga 35,030 votes, Uhuru Kenyatta 97 votes. To Nyamira County and Borabu constituency, Raila Odinga 21,710 votes, 11,456 for Uhuru Kenyatta. This, remember, are official votes. Karua 256, Kenneth 308, Musalia 299, Kiapi 181, Dida 81, Muite 40. Kuria East, which is in Migori County, Kuria East, Martha Karua 143, Raila Odinga 12,126, Uhuru Kenyatta 9,192, Karua 143 votes, Kenneth 145, Musalia Mudavadi 178, Kiapi 108, Dida 56, Muite coming in with 25 votes. 11 county constituencies so far. I have just recaptured some of what the results that have been announced right here by commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Remember, these announcements continue coming throughout the night until the last results are in. Let's move on now to Gatanga constituency. Uhuru Kenyatta 61,214, Raila Odinga 5,287, Karua 104 votes, Kenneth 923, Musalia 180, Kiapi 162, Dida 59, Muite 44. To Kirinyaga Central Constituency, Muite 29, Dida 52, Kiapi 163, Musalia 70, Kenneth 184, Karua 327, Raila Odinga 877, Uhuru Kenyatta 53,610 votes. That's in Kirinyaga Central Constituency. The 14th constituency announced just now, Mwea constituency, Raila Odinga 1,144 votes, Karua 404, Uhuru Kenyatta 75,347, Kenneth 213, Musalia 95, Kiapi 225, Dida 89, Muite 45 votes. All right, they continue coming in. Remember, KTN is your authoritative channel, your election channel. You want to stay with us as we continue bringing you these results. Let's move on now to Ruiru constituency, and Raila Odinga there with 16,286, Kiapi 81, Karua 233, Dida 63 votes, Peter Kenneth 756, Musalia Mudavadi 423, Muite 18, and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta 76,403. Moving on to Kikuyu constituency, Kiapi 66 votes, Karua 182, Dida 25, Peter Kenneth 501, Mudavadi 192, Muite 45 votes, Raila 3,350, Uhuru Kenyatta 53,904. Gatundu North constituency, the last one they've announced just now, Uhuru Kenyatta 49,158, Raila Odinga 349 votes, Muite 19, Mudavadi 59, Kenneth 102, Dida 32, Karua 82, and James Ole Kiapi 74 votes. So they've just given results of 17 more constituencies. Earlier we were standing at 50 constituency, so now a total of 67 constituencies. Official results of all 67 out of 290 constituencies now in, and we'll continue bringing you those results as they come in. Remember, one of the other things that she mentioned before she left, that so far 215 returning officers have already arrived. They're here at the Bomas of Kenya, currently at the National Tallying Center. It is in the building next to this one where they're giving the briefings and where we're following these events unfold. So we're sure then that by morning, so many more, it's already morning, but as the hours go by, more results will continue to come in. And as I mentioned, as these results were being announced by the commissioners, the figures on the final tally of the presidential poll were also changing. I just want to turn to one of the screens right now, and Uhuru Kenyatta currently standing at 1,423 votes, 449. That's all right now on the screens mounted here, and Raila Odinga standing at 990,488. So those numbers were changing as they were announcing the results. So far, 67 constituencies in. We continue to wait and, of course, bring you the results as they come in. That's all for now from the Bomas of Kenya.
Thanks so much, Sophia Wanuna. She, of course, is live for us at the IEBC's Nerve Center, the Bomas of Kenya. I think you meant 990,000 and some for Raila Odinga, certainly not 990 million, but the hour, of course, is late. But thank you so much, Sophia, for staying on top of those numbers for us. Joining me is Tom Wolf. Of course, he is a researcher. We're taking a look at these numbers and trying to understand what they can tell us so far about the expectations of Kenyans and how you have been voting. And Tom, for me, what really has stood out so far, especially when we've been looking at central Kenyan numbers that should be a stronghold for Uhuru Kenyatta, we are seeing a considerably larger vote going for Raila Odinga as opposed to the reverse in the Luo Nyanza, if you like, areas where we are seeing basically the tally for the Jubilee candidate coming up to 0% of the vote. And I just want to go through some of that for you. Take, for instance, Suba in Homa Bay, Raila Odinga 30,292, Uhuru Kenyatta managing only 85 votes. Ugenya, which is in Siaya County, Raila Odinga getting 35,030, Uhuru Kenyatta only 97 votes. Let me see if I could squeeze in one more just to help illustrate this point. I don't think I have. Let's look at Siaya. Let me just see some of these figures. 165 votes. Sorry, GEM constituency, right?
Yes.
Uhuru Kenyatta with 165 votes, Raila Odinga with 50,067. That's in comparison to the numbers that we are seeing in places like Gatanga, Kirinyaga Central, Kikuyu, where Raila Odinga in these areas that should be vote-rich for Uhuru Kenyatta is coming up in the thousands in terms of support, right? Gatanga 5,287 against Uhuru 61,000 plus vote. Let me just see if I can fix another one here. Here we are, Kikuyu, Uhuru Kenyatta getting 53,904, still the majority, but Raila Odinga breaching the hundreds, going into 3,350. And in your opinion, and based on the research you've been doing, what could we attribute this to? Why is it that we are seeing Raila gaining more popularity, at least in terms of percentage points, you know, 3–4% in these areas that should be Uhuru strongholds, and Uhuru unable to replicate a similar base in Raila strongholds?
That's certainly a good question. I mean, on the basis of these figures, we can't say. However, we know from other research that we've done that just in terms of the ethnic distribution of the population across the landscape of Kenya, that in certain parts of Central Province, certainly, we do have a substantial proportion of migrant labor from Western Kenya. That's not to say that there wouldn't be any people who are native to Central Province, Kikuyu in particular, who wouldn't vote for Raila, but looking, as I say, at survey data from elsewhere, we know that there is not a large, but a countable population that probably would account for most of those numbers. However, together with that, I think the main point that we want to emphasize for the viewers, anyone who's still up at this hour, is what explains that 400,000, roughly 400,000 advantage or lead that Uhuru Kenyatta has at the moment. And of course the question is that you had asked earlier, anytime we show a cumulative total on the screen, especially when it's well below 50%, and we've got about 2.5 million votes counted, which comes roughly to a quarter of what we would expect based on these turnout figures, 2.5 million, around 25% of the total. To try and figure out, to answer to what extent are these figures representative of the remaining 75% that we haven't yet seen come in.
Too early?
It's too early, but when we look through these constituencies, we're seeing about 60% of them are from Jubilee strongholds. That explains part of it. Also, together with that, notwithstanding the contrast that you pointed out in the almost monolithic vote for Raila in Cord strongholds in Western Kenya as opposed to these in Central, is that where Uhuru is dominant in the Jubilee constituencies, many of them are 70, 80, even twice as large in terms of voting population of valid votes, 60, 70,000 votes being cast as opposed to 30, 40, 50,000 in areas where Raila is getting close to 100% of the vote. So that helps to explain why, even with the contrast that you mentioned, Uhuru can still be leading
the lead
by 400,000 votes.
And this, it really goes all the way back to the fact that when it was that 30-day period of registering voters, and it's something that we heard all the way in the run-up to this election, that Uhuru Kenyatta somewhat managed to whip up more of his support base to actually register as voters, as opposed to Raila Odinga's strongholds, where actually, if you check with IEBC data, it was significantly, I won't say well below, but significantly below even what IEBC had projected to register.
But we did an analysis, I don't disagree with you, but we did an analysis, which we had to do, when we changed our sampling frame after the IEBC released their registered voters figures for all the counties in the country. Actually, they did it by 17 regions, but then we broke it down into counties. Because we knew when we were doing our survey, we had to know how many interviews are going to be done in each part of the country. And we knew, for example, that by the 2009 census, 13% of the Kenyan population was located in Central Province, is located in Central Province. But when we looked at the registration figures from IEBC, we found that we needed to do 15% of our interviews in Central, 2% more than we would have done just on the basis of population, 18 and over, with regard to the registered voters figures. Now, Raila also had a little bit of a gain in certain places. Uhuru had a gain in some other places. Altogether, we figured that just by registration, Uhuru and Jubilee got about a 3% bump upwards in terms of what would be the eventual vote count on the basis of the distribution of the vote. Not huge, but certainly in a close election, enough to make a difference. So we're starting from simply the population, which would account for, 95, 96, 97% of how the vote would eventually come out, but then another 3 or 4% that would go to Jubilee on the basis of the registration figures you mentioned. Not huge. But then we have the additional factor of voter turnout, because even if you've got 100 votes registered behind you, and I've got 100 votes registered behind me, and we're competing to be, I don't know, king of KTN, or whatever it is.
My Lord.
If only half of my people to come out to vote,
yeah,
and 100% of your people come out, I don't have a chance. And that's why the turnout figures are very, very crucial. Now, I looked through the first 43 constituencies that had been reported before we got this last number of 13 or 14, excuse me, whatever it was, I haven't counted. And I found that in the strongholds of Cord and in the strongholds of Jubilee, the turnout figures are identical, around 88%. Where I'm finding a decrease is when we get into areas such as in Kisii or at the coast. In Taita it's down 5 to 8%. In Kisii it's down about 10%. In other parts of Coast Province it's also down, instead of 88, it's down around in the mid-70s and so on. So these other constituencies where Raila is scoring very high.
I'd love to know if you can just, I don't know, off the top of your mind, identify the constituencies in,
like
in
in
the
Sambweni, in Kwale, and
areas where there may have been concern.
We got in Wundanyi and in Mwatate.
Over the violence that we witnessed on election day, maybe could have kept a few people home, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say. We would have to do a post-election survey. I mean, overall, I haven't, again, calculated exactly, but we're getting at least 10% above in those Coast Province constituencies what we got in 2007 or in the referendum. So there's definitely a higher interest.
Yeah.
Part of that may be because of the new devolved seats for governor and Senate, which are causing the voter turnout to rise to, it looks like for the nation, between 80 and 85%, which is absolutely unprecedented. If you recall, when we first started getting the figures, the provisional results, we got estimates from IEBC that we could expect a turnout between 70 and 75%. I haven't heard an estimate from them since we've gone to the official manual results.
Right.
They've been concerned with other things.
Yeah.
But just looking at these results that we've got, it seems that this is probably going to set a record which will stand like some, Olympic gold medal winners or world record for I don't know how many more elections would they ever get this high.
And
again, these are not final.
Also, as far as the coast is concerned, in inclusion to the fact that yes, there are all these other seats that brought representation of the people, to the forefront. the land question remains such a major issue throughout the campaign. The fact that there was no real clarity or perhaps very concrete positions taken by Uhuru Kenyatta and basically Jubilee in answering that question. I know a lot of times that they talked about getting into deals with one of the owners of contested land in the area and all of that, but seems not to have churned out, and that's part of the analysis that we heard a little earlier. You wanted to say something?
Well, just my understanding, by making a number of phone calls to the coast in the last day.
But this is not empirical like the rest of the surveys.
No, but the
but go ahead.
But the impression that my people on the ground got, voters, was that the factor that you mentioned, the fears of MRC attacks or whatever, and in terms of also what happened, it seems that it has depressed the vote more in Kilifi and Malindi, for which we've not had any results. I can't remember if we had any provisional ones yesterday, than in Msambweni, where I guess a little counterintuitive, it's been thought that the MRC has a bit more support, more of a following down in Kwale, but that, at least from what I was hearing on the phone, very impressionistic, that there were a number of polling stations in the Malindi area. We'll see that when we get the results, but where the vote was depressed even more than on the south coast.
Yeah,
so that may be a factor in addition to what I said earlier.
Absolutely, and it's probably something that needs a little bit more investigation and empirical data to see what actually happened. I want to just quickly draw your attention to the figures that we were getting for Nairobi County. I think about 4 or 5. We got Kasarani, Kajiado North, we got Kajiado East, Kajiado West, Kamkunji. And you know, in the lead up to this, we kept saying, I think in Nairobi was it 1.44 plus million votes registered and traditionally has voted as a swing area, if you like, a lot of the times in favor of the opposition. We're just looking at some of the numbers, and I'll read them out to you, and I'd love to hear what you think, Tom, so far, especially in the contrast between not only Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta, but also the more, if you like, new generation candidates who you would have expected to elicit perhaps a little bit, if they were to get popular support anywhere other than their home constituencies, then it would be in a place like Nairobi, which is by far the most cosmopolitan part of this country, perhaps has the best education and all those other things that, you know, we aspire, we tend to think would contribute to making a difference as far as voting is concerned, right? So let me just go through some of these for you at home, for your benefit in case you didn't catch it, and then we'll get into that. Musalia Mudavadi in Kasarani gets 438 votes, Peter Kenneth 894 votes, Raila Odinga 24,818 votes, Uhuru Kenyatta 64,313 votes. And I think what immediately struck me is the fact that Peter Kenneth was clearly more popular in this poll than Musalia Mudavadi by at least nearly 400 votes difference. I'll move on to Kajiado North. Peter Kenneth got 921 votes, Raila Odinga 26,853 votes, Uhuru Kenyatta 53,702 votes. Again, Peter Kenneth taking the lead there, leaving behind, if you like, the more experienced politicians, the Musalias and the Martha Karuas there. Kajiado East, Uhuru Kenyatta 23,724 votes, Raila Odinga 32,498 votes. I'll say that again, Raila Odinga 32,498 votes. Kajiado West, Musalia Mudavadi 108 votes, Peter Kenneth 171 votes, Raila Odinga 20,488 votes, Uhuru Kenyatta 22,358 votes. And the final one for now, look at how Dida performed in Kamkunji. 1,559 votes. I'm not sure even in his home constituency he's managed to get this number of votes, but Kamkunji voters certainly must have been impressed with him when it came to the presidential debates, because quite frankly he did no other campaigns on the ground. Tom, I'll come to you for your comments just in a bit. Let me go through the rest of the votes. Raila Odinga 31,730 votes, and Uhuru Kenyatta 36,000 762 votes. Let's start with Kamkunji. I don't know the kind of figures that you have received so far, as far as perhaps Northeastern is concerned, and whether at all the fact that he's a son of that area endeared him to voters. But for me, I think this is the highest vote I have seen for him in Kamkunji.
Well, as you...
After hearing from him only twice in the... Well, thrice, I would say, when he presented his nomination papers. This is at a national level. When he presented his nomination papers, well, at the first and second presidential debates.
As you were hinting, we know in some quarters, Eastleigh is known as Little Mogadishu. So it's not surprising that of all the constituencies outside of Northeastern, that Mr. Dida would have performed better there than anywhere else. And that really raises the question which is asked in the study of voting across sub-Saharan Africa. And that is the question, are such elections, or to what extent are these elections anything more than an ethnic census? Or to put it another way around, what is the level of divergence of the vote for any particular candidate or party from what the distribution of the ethnic population is within that electoral unit? Now, of course...
For Africa as a whole?
Yeah, because, I mean, politics in Africa, in other countries from Kenya, at least where people have the freedom to vote for whom they want, and you have multi-party choices and multiple candidates, and not all countries quite have that, by and large, there is a general picture that is derived from the study of voter behavior that people will vote for, at least at the presidential level, candidates that they can identify with in terms of ethnic origin. Now, we know in Kenya that, at least in terms of the two main coalitions, they have two candidates each, a presidential candidate and a deputy, that those represent only 4 ethnic groups in the country. They are among the 4 largest, leaving out the Luya, who have their own candidate. So one question might be, in terms of the what we call the importance or the salience of ethnicity in voting in this election.
But it's not purely, I mean, that one would vote for their ethnicity. And this,
absolutely.
Sorry, let me just make my point. First, being that we are all entitled to our ethnic identities, there's nothing wrong with that. It's how you deal with it and whether or not you feel a superiority, if you like, to another community, and then it goes to the extent of significant, you know, disenfranchising of others based on that, etc., and of course violence and that degeneration. But also, if you look at places like Kisii and etc., they did not have a leading candidate.
Absolutely.
But they did put in significant votes for 2 people who seemed to have a national appeal, that they were able, Raila, anywhere outside of Nyanza, anywhere outside of Central, then means that these 2 gentlemen have been able, to some extent, to garner a national appeal. Something that, for instance, when we talk about Western Kenya, one of their challenges has been, have they been able to present a candidate from the region who has, beyond their community, a national outlook?
Well, I think these comments that you've made are very, very useful in illustrating the complexity of the ethnic factor in voting in a country like Kenya. Because first of all, you made the absolutely crucial distinction between communities that do and do not have a presidential candidate at all. Then you also made a distinction, or you were hinting at one, between those communities that have a presidential candidate that, whether through the opinion polls or just general understanding, has a realistic chance of winning, and those that don't, that are symbolic. So in order to find out how important the ethnic factor in terms of the straight identification and voting for somebody from one's ethnic group, we would have to look at, for example, what percentage of all Somalis in Kenya will vote for Mr. Dida? What percent of all Luyus will vote for Mr. Mudavadi? And we know from the figures the few figures that we even had from Western, they're far, far less than 100%. Now, why is that? One of the reasons that that's true is not simply because people have an impression of the realistic possibilities of these individuals winning, but that these different ethnic communities in Kenya, their internal organization is quite different in terms of the level of cultural homogeneity, what's the nature of the subgroups, if there are any, that make up the ethnic collectivity, how long have they had a political identity that unites them. In contrast to Uganda, for example, there is no ethnic community in Kenya that I know of that had a kingdom before colonialism, whereas in Uganda, we definitely had kingdoms, some having imperial designs on other communities. So the whole history of the ethnic organization of these communities in Uganda is quite different from those in what we have in Kenya.
Let's bring back the conversation to Nairobi and the results that we have seen so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 they are, and really that distribution of the vote between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. I think one of the largest margins, and perhaps we could counter-check with the figures that you put down, would be in Kasarani, where Uhuru Kenyatta has probably got about a difference of maybe 30,000 votes. Yeah, about 30,000 votes with Raila Odinga, you know, talking about 64,313 and 24,000 and something. And then a closer race, 2,000 difference, a little bit over 2,000 in Kajiado West. How do you see these numbers affecting at all the entire Nairobi region in terms of, is there a clear candidate who is taking the lead? Is there a clear favorite for you?
Well, based on our pre-election opinion polls, Raila, if I recall, Odinga had a slight lead for Nairobi as a whole, as a county, somewhere around 55%, if I remember correctly. But again, when you point out the different results in these constituencies, we have to ask that same question first of all. Are these numbers just a reflection of an ethnic census, at least in terms of those people who got to the polling station?
Areas like Kajiado, I think, which are the 3 Kajiados which are here, are fairly cosmopolitan. So I'm not sure that would be the case, because we have, look, again, one, we've said they're cosmopolitan, and 2, look at the numbers. Raila is at 26,000 in Kajiado North, Uhuru Kenyatta at 53,000 and something for all these figures. Then we have 23,000 for Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, 32,000 and something in Kajiado East. Kajiado West, we have a difference of 2,000 between the two. They're both in the 20,000 region. So I would find that argument a little difficult.
Well, it's not that the argument is difficult, it's that we can't make the argument unless we know what's the ethnic census numbers in each of those constituencies. Otherwise, we're just guessing. I mean, obviously, if there is 20% population of the ethnic community of a candidate in one constituency, and 50% of that candidate's ethnic population in another, and yet the results that come out, the proportion of the vote is the same, then we can say that the ethnic factor was not nearly that great. But unless we have the data, we can't make any conclusions. In
your opinion, and with the kind of research that you've done, how far do you see the migration, and of course every Kenyan has a right to live, work, be anywhere in this country, how far do you feel rural-urban migration to, of course, these like key towns in the country has affected the way regions are voting? Has there been a significant enough blending of communities? Do you foresee a significant enough movement that would actually change the math as far as how regions vote?
Well, you've got 2 really important research questions in that question. One is, to what extent do variations in voting at a regional basis simply reflect the ethnic mix on the ground? And we can, for example, look at the 25% of the population in Rift Valley that is of Mount Kenya origin. And we can look at the constituencies where these people are concentrated and look at the vote. Similarly with the Mpeketoni area in Lamu, which is a large settlement scheme where there are many people of a Mount Kenyan origin, and we can look at the distribution of the vote there. The second question that you're asking, or that's inside of your question, which is in a way more interesting, is could anything happen in terms of the social integration of a population from whatever ethnic homeland after a number of generations perhaps of living in a different area? which would change their view of political leadership or of ethnic loyalty.
Yeah, would color the map differently.
And then we'd have to get into some other social processes such as intermarriage, such as perhaps religious conversion, integrating into certain economic aspects of that area, where in order to survive, you have to have economic interaction with
any
people of different
reasonable
groups.
sample or data that you have that could give some kind of answer?
Well, we would have to spend some time, you know, on the laptop looking at this stuff. I couldn't do it on air just now. But by and large, what elections tend to do in Kenya is to, wherever they're living, from the data we have, it sort of sends people back to their sort of tribal home. Frankly, not 100%.
In terms of registering as a voter?
In terms of voting, who they're going to vote for.
Okay, regardless of where they're registered.
That's right. We tend to see that. I mean, well, I could get into some other analogies.
Okay.
But as I think you or one of your colleagues mentioned off-air before, in many ways, there's nothing inherently wrong in that in terms of undermining national stability, as long as people feel that the electoral process and the government that results from that electoral process is, number one, fair, and number two, gives opportunity for whatever views that these people have to be expressed. And the most striking result that we get when we correlate ethnic identity with attitudes to government, for example, the question, what is the main issue that you would like the next government to address? We find that across the ethnic landscape of this country, we see the answers are, the distributions are the same. Employment, controlling the cost of living, corruption, security. You would think that all Kenyans are of merely one tribe when you look at their position on issues.
And you know, that really is the point. All Kenyans are actually one tribe, and it has largely been a manipulation of that, or the painting of certain communities in different lights that causes the kind of turmoil we have witnessed in the past. But kudos, of course, we keep saying this to Kenyans so far, for really being calm in a difficult process, well, the most complicated election we've ever had. Results coming in, I think, a little slower than they had hoped to, but we're still seeing a lot of calm. I'm hoping right now that we can take the results that you are seeing adjacent to me right now full screen, because, of course, these are being regularly updated at the IEBC's Nerve Center, the Bomas of Kenya, of course. This is the presidential tally. I'm hoping that we can take it full screen right now, just to give you a good picture as to how far this has changed, of course, with the about, I think, 16 constituencies that we have recorded results from. So let's just take a look at those numbers right now. I think, Tom, you're quite welcome to take a walk with me.
Okay. As
you see these numbers full screen. 1,716,206. That is the national tally, the presidential tally for Uhuru Kenyatta of TMA, still in the lead there. About 600,000 votes, Tom, I think, ahead of Raila Odinga of the coalition of the Orange Party. 1,132,272 votes for him so far. Musalia Mudavadi at 58,000. He's recording nearly half of what the other gentlemen have been able to garner, I think. 58,468. Let's see, Peter Kenneth coming in next at 14.